Press your beans and roll your leaf. Prepare to hear the words of the wise that thwart folly. Not sure I'm entirely happy with that intro, but I think it's distinctive. So today we're talking about the adventuring philosopher and her video entitled, what was it again? Chattel slavery. Chattel, by the way, is misspelled. We are the only ones that practice that. Okay. In this video, she goes on to claim that only in the history of the United States do we have any record of chattel slavery of black people. I'm going to let you sink in with that for just a moment. All right, now that you've thought to yourself that can't be true, you're right, it isn't. Fact, she will go on to point out that the first example of chattel slavery is an incident that happened in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia, when 20 enslaved Africans arrived at Point Comfort in the British colony of Virginia aboard a privateer ship. That ship, which she doesn't name, was called the White Lion. It was captained by John Jope, an English privateer, who took the slaves from a Dutch ship named the San Juan Bautista, bound for Vera Cruz. Now, I am not condoning slavery, and I'm not saying we should make light of it. But if I'm an African slave, I would damn well want to be owned by a white Englishman more than a white Dutchman. There's some reasons for that. If you know your history of slavery and how the various European powers treated slaves differently, you know what I'm talking about. But the point of the matter is that she says that this is the start of chattel slavery in the United States, and she's wrong. That would be the Spanish, my dear. 1526, Spanish Florida, enslaved Africans were first brought to the continent by Spanish explorer Lucas Vasquez de Ayllon. I think that's how you pronounce that. My Spanish is horrible. Whose expedition founded the short-lived settlement of San Miguel de Guadalupe. By the way, there will be a major slave uprising in that little settlement. That was near present-day Georgia/South Carolina. And another prominent moment is in 1528 in the southwestern Texas, when enslaved Africans, such as a gentleman by the name of Estavayaso, again, my Spanish is horrible, arrived alongside Spanish explorers like the Narvaez expedition in present-day Texas. Now, where did these Europeans get these slaves? That's a great question. There's no colonial powers yet. So where are the Spanish getting these people, and why are they treating them like that? Well, they're getting these people from the Arabs. You see, there's a long and glorious history within Islam of the slave trade. Did you know that Saudi Arabia finally banned slavery in 1975 Common Era? And even then, that was the official decree. It still goes on privately. In other African nations that are dominated by Sharia law, slavery is a well-known fact, particularly if you happen to be a woman. And even today in Islam, although they will say that there's no racist component to the religion, ask any black Muslim, he will tell you that Arab Muslims look down on you if you're not Arab. You will commonly get called slave. That's just what it is. Now, her adamant denial of this also takes out another horror of the slave trade. The Arabs aren't going off on expeditions, and nor the Europeans, to go into African villages, sack the village, take everyone's slaves, and put them on ships and bound them for parts unknown. Oh, no. Other black people are enslaving black people and selling them. Yeah. Kind of changes the equation there, doesn't it? And then in her video, she continues on, doubling down on this stupid idea by ignoring that Native Americans had slavery. The Aztecs had it. The Incans had it. Even the Iroquois and the Eastern Woodland tribes had a form of slavery. So I don't know where she's getting off thinking only white people committed the act of being slave owners, unless, for some reason, she doesn't like white people. And guess what? That's a consistent thread throughout all her videos. I would love to have her explain why, if only white people, she says at one point, in all of history, we're the only ones who do that. I would love to have her explain why the earliest evidence of chattel slavery is from 3000 BC in what is today Iran. I would love to have her explain why the first legal proof of slavery comes not from white people, but from the Code of Ur-Nammu, the oldest known surviving legal text originating in the Sumerian city of Ur. Now, the last I checked, the Sumerians weren't exactly what we would call white. Now, were they? And who are they enslaving? It's the Fertile Crescent. Africa's too damn far away. You see this doubled down again in the Code of Hammurabi in 1754 before Common Era. It's almost like people can be assholes. It's almost like people in general want to have other people do their work for them. It's almost like slavery is, unfortunately, part of the human experience in ancient history. And if it's there in the ancient era, what's to say that, it hasn't been with us the entire time? As you look through history, you'll see various things that you could call a slave. Even the concept of serfdom in feudal Europe. People want to quibble at that not being slavery, but you couldn't leave the land. You weren't allowed to fight back. You weren't allowed to really own anything. You're basically a slave farmer. Sharecroppers had it better. Oh, but we're not done with her claims, because then she claims that black people are somehow more virtuous than white people and have never used violence against their enslavers. Remember the San Miguel de Guadalupe thing I mentioned earlier? In 1526, in the Spanish colony near the modern-day border of Georgia and South Carolina, this is the first recorded revolt of enslaved Africans in what was now the United States. Now note, that's the first recorded revolt in the United States, not the first recorded slave revolt. Enslaved individuals burned the leader's home and escaped to live amongst the indigenous groups that surrounded it. You then have the Stone Rebellion in 1739. This is just a list of some of the more prominent ones. 1811, the German Coast Uprising. Nat Turner's Rebellion in 1831, big fan. Amistad seizure in 1839, made for a great movie, although the movie got wrong exactly how the arguments went before the court. But I think they realized those arguments for the court that were actually delivered would not fall well on modern American ears. Then you've got slave uprisings in South America, where they're predominantly led by Maroons, escaped enslaved people, and targeted grueling colonial industries. Major rebellions ranged from the century-long defense of Quilombo dos Palmares in Brazil to the organized Muslim Malay Revolt in Salvador. And that's not including things like King Barria's Rebellion in Venezuela in 1552, the San Basilio de Palenque in Colombia in the 16th century, and the Suriname Maroon Wars from the 17th to the 18th century. You want some really nasty reading about slave uprisings against their masters, read anything about the Haitian Revolution from 1791 to 1804. Yeah. Now, I don't mean to make it seem like she's ignorant, but this is a woman who's claimed to be an educator and she can't do a simple Google search. A simple Google search. Well, that's all in the past. What about modern black people? They aren't violent. They aren't making retribution. Oh boy. What would you call those events we had on the West Coast, where close to $2 billion worth of damage was done? Several federal agents were permanently injured. Almost 25 people were killed in just the George Floyd section of those riots. Not to mention all the people that died from not being able to get their ambulance to the hospital because of streets being blocked. What would you call that? I got another one for you we're going to end the video with that never got enough media attention and should have. So her claim that black people are somehow more virtuous than people. That they're somehow an enlightened soul and not just people like the rest of us who would push too far will push back. It's ludicrous, and it's based on the white hate that runs through all her videos. All right. Then she makes a claim that only slave labor built the United States. Oh boy. Every time I hear this one, I'm like, my Irish ancestors like to have a word with you. Indentured servitude, basically slavery with a bit more politeness, was a thing. All those colonists that risked death to get here would like to have a word with you. So did all those pioneers that cut paths out of the jungle. Sorry, the forest, say the forest. So did all the people that married into native tribes and made mixed communities to help the wilderness thrive. All these people would like to have a very long, lengthy word with you, Kelly. No one's denying that slavery helped build the United States, but it was not the only factor. And to make a claim that we built the nation on the back of only slave labor is ludicrous. It also does a disservice to everybody who didn't own slaves, who lived during that time period, lumping them into a community of slave owners and holders that they had nothing to do with. But you tend to do that a lot. Lump people together in easy to blame groups. Speaking of that, she makes the claim that Trump's election to the President of the United States made racism chic again. That made it possible for people to openly be racist. Can I read just some names real quick of people who were racist long before Trump and were very prominent in American politics? First one that comes to mind, working backwards, Nick Fuentes. Probably the best known racist on the internet. He starts his campaign on social media in 2017. Pat Buchanan, 1966 to 2000 is when he's active in politics. Paleo-conservative racist. David Duke, Democrat. 1989 to 1992 is when he's politically active and still occasionally creates problems afterward. Strong Thurman, 1933 to 2003. Oh, but that's not the only names that come to mind. You see, there's been other presidents of the United States that were openly racist, such as Lyndon B. Johnson, who's got a famous quote about, "We'll have those blank voting Democrat for the next 100 years." She ends her video with a faulty appeal to reparations. We owe black people. No, we don't. There's this common thing in the law that you may be ignorant of, Kelly. Only the people responsible for harm are responsible to pay any indemnity or restitution for it. So if I never enslaved anybody, why am I being charged money in the form of taxes to repay for something somebody else did? And I don't even know what your answer is, you just don't want to admit it. Because I'm white. Now I want you to remember this name. I want you to look up this incident. Because every time I hear one of these progressive people come out with the whole idea about reparations and white people are so nasty to black people and yada whatever, I want you to remember this name. Jessica Dottie Whitaker. Look it up. Briefly, the story goes like this. Whitaker and her boyfriend were walking through an area in which there was some BLM activity going on. She had her small child with her. If I remember correctly, the boy was 3 at the time. They are stopped by a pair of black males who demand they say Black Lives Matter, and Jessica refuses to say that. She instead replies, all lives matter. A few moments later, she's murdered in front of her son. Case is still open, no suspect has been caught. It is not difficult to come to the conclusion about what happened. She's unarmed, she's not posing a threat, but she said something to this political action group could be offensive. Now, before you think that is a spurious conclusion that could not be the case, ever heard the name Errol Danielson? Now, Danielson was admittedly probably not the best guy. He's a member of, I think it was Patriot Prayer. But he was obeying the law. And we have video of him being tracked down by an Antifa/BLM sympathizer, who also happened to be a white guy, stalked and murdered at close range with a pistol. Vice News actually did an interview with the perp, rather than turn him into the police, where he justified his action. And I remember the night it happened, hearing BLM spokespersons say, we held our own. Kelly, people are just people. They all react like people. And you seem to think that white people aren't people the way you keep talking about them. So on that note, we're going to end this episode of my counter showing where she was wrong about slavery. And we're going to go into another video soon of hers. I'm going to try to do at least one every 2 or 3 days. It may seem that I am being petty, but I think what we have here with Kelly is a perfect example of the judgmental, violent, anti-Western liberal. And we got to rise up against it because that's what's destroying our country.